I've been making a lot of dark and heavy beers recently, so I think it's time we switch it up and make something gnarly. This beer from Drekker is a good starting point for what I'm hoping to create. They call this one a smoothie sour, but there's a lot of overlap in these sour styles. Whether you call it a pastry sour, smoothie sour, fruit tart, or anything else, I'm looking for a moderate ABV, a huge amount of fruit, and some spritzy carbonation. I also want to test something out with Philly sour yeast that I've never tried before. Now, let's make some beer. For this beer, I'm starting with some reverse osmosis water, and I'm adding some water salts to craft the perfect water profile. In the past, I've used a drier profile to offset the fruit, but this time I'm going to try my New England IPA water profile and a two-step mash just to try something different. For the grain bill, I'm keeping things super simple, starting with a 50-50 mix of pale 2-row and Vienna, targeting an original gravity of 1060. Let's get it going. I'll keep mashing this in until everything is nice and saturated, and then I'll start a 30-minute timer for the first mash step at 140 Fahrenheit or 60 Celsius. And after a short rest, I can start recirculating the mash to help regulate the mash temperature and filter the wort through the grain bed. All right, we've spent 30 minutes at 140 Fahrenheit or 60 Celsius, and then 30 minutes at 158 or 70 Celsius. Time to yank these grains and get our boil started. With the basket up and out of the kettle, I'm recirculating the wort to increase clarity and hopefully increase efficiency. After a 10-minute Vorlauf, I'm sparging with just over 2 gallons of water. With that out of the way, it's time for our one and only hop addition. Here's 10 grams of Cascade, and we'll start making our way up to a boil. Okay, we've been boiling for 45 minutes and it's time to add some yeast nutrient. A quick 5 minutes later, and it's time to sanitize the chiller. And just like that, we've reached the end of the boil. But before I start the cooling process, I'm adding 12 ounces of marshmallows. These things contain quite a bit of dextrose, which should help feed the Philly sour yeast I'm planning to use and help make sure this beer gets nice and tart. I made sure the heat was turned off before I threw these in, and after just a few minutes, they dissolved right into the beer. With that out of the way, it's time to chill this thing down and get ready for fermentation. I have my BREWBUILT glycol chiller set to 68 Fahrenheit or 20 Celsius, and I'm pitching 2 different yeasts. Philly Sour will drop the pH to make it sour, and Imperial Low-Key should kick in pretty quickly to finish things off. About 10 days later, the gravity stabilized, and the following weekend, I decided it was time to add some fruit. I've experimented with a few different ways to add fruit to beers, but this time, I decided to add 11 pounds of blackberry puree from Fierce Fruit directly into the keg. The keg is freshly sanitized, and this puree comes completely aseptic. With the fruit in the keg, I'll flush it with CO2 and purge as much oxygen as possible before transferring the beer on top. Now, let's see how this thing turned out. With this beer, I'm looking for a moderate ABV, a huge amount of fruit, and some spritzy carbonation. The color is nice with plenty of fruit and suspension, and this beer has a nice bright head that surprisingly sticks around. The aroma has tons of sharp berry notes and hints that there might be some lactose or marshmallow in there. And the flavor is full of cranberry and blackberry with a little bit of marshmallow. It has a decent amount of body, but not too much, and the carbonation is right on point. But for this style, I think I want more marshmallow flavors. One trick you can use to improve almost any fruited sour beer is to add a bit of vanilla in whatever form you prefer. This tricks your brain into perceiving the beer as sweeter and more full, and once you figure out the proper dose for a single glass, you can scale it up to dose the full keg. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out, and I'm stoked to have it on draft over the next few weeks. My name's Dan, this is Hops and Gnarly, thanks for hanging out with me today, I'll see you again soon.